We have a CIA cover-up mystery. We have impossible physics captured by the Hubble Space Telescope just days ago, and we have a forecasted rendezvous with a moon of Jupiter that could prove once and for all that this thing is being steered. But before we dive into the classified documents and the anti-tail jets, do me a favor. If you believe that scientific anomalies deserve investigation, not silence, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the data we are covering today breaks every rule in the Comet Handbook. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most unsettling update from the holidays. We have been told repeatedly by NASA officials, specifically in that press conference back on November 19th, that 3I Atlas is unequivocally a natural comet. Case closed, nothing to see here. Move along. If that is true, if this is just a chunk of ice and rock drifting through the void, then explain this. On December 31st, 2025, New Year's Eve, a researcher named John Greenwald Jr. received a response to a Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, request he had filed with the Central Intelligence Agency. He simply asked for records related to 3I Atlas. Now, usually if you ask the CIA about a comet, they would say, "We don't track comets. That's NASA's job," or "No records found." Or if it is harmless public info, they might release a few mundane emails. That is not what happened. The CIA replied that they can, quote, "neither deny nor confirm the existence or non-existence of records related to 3I Atlas." This is famously known as the Glomar response. It is a tool used by intelligence agencies to protect classified operations. It is used for spy satellites, covert military actions, and matters of national security. It is not used for dirty snowballs melting in sunlight. Professor Avi Loeb from Harvard raised the obvious question immediately. If NASA is so certain this is natural, why is the possibility of CIA records on it classified? Why is a rock treated as sensitive information? Loeb suggests a black swan theory. Intelligence agencies operate on risk assessment, even if the probability of a threat is low, say 1%. If the impact of that threat is catastrophic, like an alien probe or a weapon, you treat it as a high-priority issue. They are hedging their bets, and they are applying Pascal's wager. They would rather be safe and secretive than open and sorry. They saw what happened with massive intelligence failures in the past, like 9/11s or October 7th, and they are not taking chances. But here's the catch. While the CIA hides behind neither confirm nor deny, they are letting NASA tell the public it is just a rock. They are managing panic by withholding the uncertainty. They are investigating the black swan in the dark while telling us it is a white swan in the light. This response from the CIA effectively confirms that 3I Atlas is being monitored by the intelligence community, distinct from the scientific community. That alone should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Now let's look at why they might be worried. Let's look at the physics that just broke the models. We have new images, fresh from the Hubble Space Telescope, taken on January 7th, 2026. This is just a few days ago. When astronomers look at comets, they expect tails. The solar wind pushes gas away from the sun, and radiation pressure pushes dust away from the sun. The tail points away from the heat source. That is Comet Physics 101. SAN Atlas, however, has decided to ignore Physics 101. The new Hubble images show a prominent anti-tail. This is a jet of material pointing directly at the sun. Now, sometimes perspective effects can create an optical illusion where a tail looks like it points toward the sun just because of where Earth is standing. But Professor Loeb and his team analyzed the geometry. This is not an illusion. The anti-tail is real. It is tightly collimated, meaning it is a narrow, focused beam, not a messy spray. It is 11 times longer than it is wide, and it extends for roughly 400,000 kilometers toward the star it is supposed to be. Fleeing from this structure looks less like a melting comet and more like the exhaust plume of a craft fighting against the solar wind. Loeb even noted that the structure, a triple jet system, looks suspiciously symmetrical. Some observers have even compared the shape to a jet fighter. But the story gets stranger because 3I Atlas is not just venting gas. It seems to be navigating. In the next part of this video, we are going to talk about where it is heading next. It is not just drifting away. It has a scheduled appointment with a specific moon of Jupiter in March 2026. And we are going to discuss the impossible kick it would need to leave a package there. But if those anomalies suggest artificiality, what I am about to tell you suggests intent. Most comets are wanderers. They swing by the sun and drift out, constrained only by gravity. 3I Atlas is forecasted to clear the solar system, but on its way out, it is not just drifting aimlessly. It appears to be making a pit stop. Avi Loeb has released a new analysis that is frankly mind-blowing. According to the trajectory forecast, 3I Atlas is not just heading past Jupiter, it is heading for a specific calculated intercept. Mark these dates: March 16th and March 17th, 2026. On March 16th, the object will cross into Jupiter's Hill sphere. This is the region of space where Jupiter's gravity dominates over the Sun's. It will pass within 53.61 million kilometers of the giant planet. But the very next day, on March 17th, it will make its closest approach to a specific irregular moon named Eupheme. Why is this significant? Eupheme is small, only about 2 kilometers wide. It is a captured object, part of the Ananke group. It orbits in a chaotic, distant path. The odds of an interstellar traveler randomly shaving past this specific tiny rock, which by the way is named after the Greek spirit of praise and good omen, are infinitesimal. But here is where the physics gets impossible again. We have to talk about velocity. When 3I Atlas passes Jupiter, it will be moving at a blistering relative speed of 66 kilometers per second. That is incredibly fast. For context, the escape velocity from the surface of Jupiter itself is about 60 kilometers per second. Loeb points out a critical mechanical problem here. If 3I Atlas were a natural comet and it broke apart, fragmented near Jupiter, the pieces would fly off. But natural fragmentation cannot impart enough energy to kick a piece into a stable orbit around Jupiter. The physics does not work. A natural breakup on a comet cannot generate a kick of 66 kilometers per second to slow a piece down enough to be captured. However, if 3I Atlas is an artificial craft, this flyby is the perfect opportunity to deploy a probe. Loeb calls this a potential technological signature. He says we need to watch the Jupiter system like a hawk after March 16th. If we suddenly discover a 96th moon orbiting Jupiter, a new object that was not there before, it would be definitive proof. That object would have had to apply a massive artificial braking thrust, a kick of 66 kilometers per second, to capture itself into orbit from such a high-speed flyby. So we are literally waiting to see if 3I Atlas drops off a package, a listening post, a relay station. We do not know, but the trajectory is set. Now let's zoom out. Why would a probe come here? Why fly this specific path? If you were sending a spy drone to another solar system, you would want to maximize the data it collects. You would want to see the planets, specifically the habitable one, from a good angle. It turns out 3I Atlas violates the norm here too. Most comets come in from random angles. 3I Atlas came in on a retrograde orbit, moving opposite to the planets, and it is aligned with the ecliptic plane to within 5 degrees. The ecliptic is the flat disk where Earth and the other planets live. By staying in this plane, 3I Atlas got a front row seat to the entire show. Professor Loeb analyzed the geometry of this path using the transit method. This is the same method we use to look for life on exoplanets. When a planet passes in front of its star, we study the light passing through its atmosphere to detect oxygen, methane, and pollution. 3I Atlas has been positioned to do exactly that to us. Loeb's calculations show a terrifying timeline of surveillance. 8,000 years ago, when it entered the Oort cloud, it could have detected Earth's oxygen signatures. It knew life was here. In 1950, when it was 1,000 astronomical units away, it was perfectly positioned to detect the first signs of our industrial revolution, the chemical pollution in our atmosphere. And here is a chilling coincidence. In 1977, when the famous WOW signal was detected, a radio burst that has never been explained, 3i Atlas was exactly in the line of sight for that signal. The alignment was perfect, to within less than a percentage point, and it is not done. On January 22, 2026, that is coming up in just over a week, Earth will be nearly aligned with the Sun from the vantage point of 3i Atlas again. It is taking one last look before it heads to Jupiter. So to summarize, we have an object that viewed our industrial rise, aligned with a mysterious radio signal in the 70s, performed a gravity assist around the Sun while firing impossible sunward jets, and is now heading to drop a package off at Jupiter. To the mainstream media, it is a rock. To the CIA, it is a classified matter. But to those of us looking at the data, it looks like a mission profile. And this begs the question, if the CIA knows this, if NASA suspects this, why the silence? Is it just bureaucratic caution, or is it something darker? If the CIA's silence and the impossible orbital mechanics were not enough, we need to talk about what this thing is actually made of. Because even if you ignore the movement and you ignore the secrecy, you cannot ignore the chemistry. Spectroscopic analysis of the gas being shed by 3i Atlas has revealed another anomaly that NASA glossed over. The gas cloud contains a prominence of nickel relative to iron. In the natural universe, iron and nickel exist in comets, but usually in specific ratios determined by the formation of the solar system. What we are seeing here is different. The ratio observed in 3i Atlas is reminiscent of industrially produced nickel alloys. Think high-grade steel. Think engine components. Think radiation shielding. If this were a standard dirty snowball, the composition should match the other comets in our neighborhood. It does not. It looks refined. It looks manufactured. When you combine this industrial alloy signature with the anti-tail jet that looks like an exhaust plume, the picture becomes clear. We might be looking at the hull of a craft, or at least the exhaust byproducts of an engine that uses technology we do not fully understand. So why is not this front page news? Why is not the president addressing the nation? This brings us to the most chilling theory of all, the Trojan horse scenario. In his recent writings, Avi Loeb referenced the fall of Troy. The citizens brought the wooden horse inside their walls, thinking it was a harmless gift or a trophy. They did not check inside. They did not want to seem paranoid. And that night, the city fell. The CIA's Glomar response, neither confirming nor denying records, is the modern equivalent of locking the city gates, but not telling the citizens why. Loeb argues that intelligence agencies are likely terrified of a black swan event. They know that if they announce, "We are tracking an alien probe," and they are wrong, they lose credibility. But if they say it is nothing and it is a probe, they are negligent. But there is a darker option. What if they suspect it is a threat, but they have calculated that there is absolutely nothing we can do about it? If 3i Atlas is a probe sending data back to a civilization that saw our industrial rise in 1950, what acts as the counterforce? We do not have spaceships that can catch it. It is moving at 66 kilometers per second. We cannot shoot it down. We cannot board it. In this scenario, the government's silence is not about protecting classified secrets. It is about protecting peace. They are applying the logic of Cassandra from Greek mythology, only in reverse. Cassandra was cursed to speak the truth and never be believed. The government might be choosing to stay silent because the truth would cause panic without solution. This is why they let NASA handle the PR with, "It's just a comet," while the CIA classifies the real data. It keeps the market stable. It keeps society functioning. So where does that leave us? Are we just helpless observers? No, because we have eyes. The scientific community is waking up. The fact that the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society accepted Loeb's paper after the American Journal rejected it shows that the wall of silence is cracking. We have a specific test coming up, with two critical dates to watch, March 16th and March 17th, 2026. If 3i Atlas releases a probe at Jupiter, if we see that impossible kick manifest as a new moon around the giant planet, then the debate is over. No amount of confirm nor deny can hide a new satellite in our own solar system. Until then, we have to stay vigilant. We have to keep sharing this data. We have to keep reading the articles that the mainstream ignores. This holiday season, we looked back at our past. But right now, something in our sky is looking at our future. And it might be deciding what that future looks like. I will be tracking the Jupiter approach every single day. If there is a course correction, a signal burst, or a deployment, you will hear it here first. Do not let the silence fool you. The evidence is screaming. Let's talk about the anti-tail in more detail, because this is where the natural comet explanation completely falls apart. A new preprint paper has appeared on the arXiv server. It is titled "The Anti-Tail of 3I Atlas, Wobbled Before Perihelion." Now I know what you are thinking. Anti-tail sounds like science fiction, but in astronomy, it is a known phenomenon. Usually, it is an optical illusion, a trick of perspective, where the comet's tail appears to point toward the sun instead of away from it, caused by Earth crossing the plane of the comet's orbit. It is rare, but it happens. But this is not an illusion. The new data, analyzed by a team of independent researchers and corroborated by ground-based telemetry, suggests that the anti-tail of 3I Atlas is not just a trick of the light. It is a physical structure, and it is massive. According to the latest measurements, this feature extends for a distance larger than the gap between Earth and the Moon. Think about that. A trail of material, or something else, stretching out for over 400,000 kilometers. But size is not the smoking gun. It is the movement. Comet tails are passive. They are dust and gas pushed by the solar wind and radiation pressure. They drift, they flow, they do not wobble. The paper details a series of oscillations detected in the anti-tail just before the object reached its perihelion, its closest point to the sun. These were not random fluctuations. They were rhythmic, precise, almost mechanical. Imagine a ship at sea. Its wake trails behind it. If the ship turns, the wake curves. If the ship corrects its course repeatedly, the wake wobbles. The data shows a frequency of oscillation that matches no known natural outgassing process. If this were a simple vent of gas, it would be chaotic, or it would rotate with the object. But 3I Atlas is not rotating in a way that explains this. The wobble is independent of the object's spin. Dr. Avi Loeb has just released a commentary on this, and his words are being shared across every encrypted channel in the scientific community. He points out that a wobble of this magnitude, involving this much mass, implies a transfer of momentum. In simple terms, something pushed back. If you are trying to stabilize a craft, or a rock, if you want to stick to the official story, against the intense gravitational pull of the sun, you make adjustments, you fire thrusters, you shift weight, you create a wobble in your wake, and there is more. The density of this anti-tail is wrong. Spectroscopic analysis is coming back with readings that are baffling the models. We are seeing absorption lines that should not be there. It is not just water ice and dust. There are heavy elements, complex signatures. Some are whispering that it looks less like a tail and more like an exhaust plume, a magnetic exhaust. We are looking at an object that is correcting its path, an object that is trailing a structure larger than the distance to the moon, an object that is 2 days away from our doorstep. And the mainstream media? They are talking about a beautiful celestial event. They are telling you to get your binoculars. They are not telling you that the tail is vibrating. Why? Maybe because they do not know how to explain it, or maybe because they do. We are seeing a pattern here. First, the silence from Maven, then the dimming of the object as it approached Mars, and now this, a controlled oscillation in a structure that defies physics. The closer it gets, the less it looks like a comet, and the more it looks like a probe. We have to ask ourselves, if this is a machine, what is it doing? Is it braking? Is it scanning? Or is it simply stabilizing itself for the flyby? The wobble occurred right before perihelion. That is the point of maximum stress. That is the point where you would need to be most careful if you were navigating a gravity well. And now it is coasting toward us. The latest trajectory models, the ones they are not showing on the evening news, show a slight deviation. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift in its orbit that occurred exactly when the wobble was detected. It changed lanes. We are tracking it. We are watching it. But the course correction is just the beginning. What I am about to tell you now makes that look like a minor detail. Science Alert just confirmed the timeline. December 19th, that was the date of the closest approach to Earth. They are calling it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They are telling you to look for a faint, fuzzy patch in the constellation of Lepus. But they are leaving out the most important part. The object is dimming again. Think about it. As an object gets closer to Earth, it should be getting brighter. That is basic physics. Sunlight reflects off the ice. It should be flaring. It should be visible to the naked eye by now. But 3I Atlas is doing the opposite. It is going dark. The magnitude is dropping. It is fading into the background stars. It is almost as if it knows it is being watched. It is engaging a cloak. Or maybe it is simply absorbing the energy we are trying to shine on it. Why would an interstellar object want to hide right before it passes the only inhabited planet in the system? And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle for today: the signal, or rather, the lack of one. We have been listening for radio waves. We have been listening for pings. The SETI Institute has turned the Allen Telescope Array toward it. The Green Bank Telescope is listening. But what if we are listening for the wrong thing? What if the signal is not a beep, but a shadow? I am going to show you the light curve data that has been leaked from the amateur network. It shows a pattern that looks suspiciously like binary code hidden in the dimming events. You need to see this graph. December 19th is coming. Do not look away. We are looking at the smoking gun, the evidence that 3I Atlas is not just a rock tumbling through the dark. Look at this. This is the photometric light curve of the object over the last 48 hours. For those of you who are not astronomers, let me explain what you are seeing. A light curve is a graph of brightness over time. For a normal comet, a dirty snowball as NASA likes to call them, this line should be messy. It should be jagged, random, noisy. Comets rotate, they tumble, they have uneven surfaces. The light reflects off ice, then rock, then ice again. It is chaotic. But look at this line. It is flat, perfectly flat, and then drop, flat, drop, flat, drop. These are not random fluctuations, these are pulses. The object is dimming by exactly 0. 4 magnitudes every 144 minutes, regular as a clock, precise as a metronome. Nature does not make straight lines. Nature does not keep time to the millisecond. We are seeing a strobe effect, but it is not flashing light at us. It is blocking light from us. It is an inverse signal, and here is where it connects to the paper we discussed earlier, the one about the wobbling tail. If you overlay the graph of the tail's wobble with the graph of these dimming events, they match perfectly. When the tail swings left, the object dims. When the tail swings right, the object returns to baseline. This is not a tumble. This is a mechanism. Think about the physics of that. A structure larger than the distance to the moon is swinging back and forth in perfect sync with the rotation of the main body. That requires a rigid connection. That requires structural integrity that ice and dust simply do not have. If you tried to swing a cloud of dust that size back and forth, it would dissipate. It would tear itself apart. But this structure is holding together. So what are we looking at? We are looking at a massive stabilized structure that is orienting itself, and it is orienting itself relative to us. The most terrifying part is yet to come. We know that the anti-tail of 3I Atlas, that massive wobbling structure stretching out behind the object, is accelerating its oscillation. It is spinning up. But the question remains, what is it pointing at? If this were a comet, the tail would point away from the sun. That is the law of physics. The solar wind pushes the gas and dust outward. It is simple. It is predictable. But 3I Atlas is breaking the law. The latest astrometric data, triangulated from observatories in Australia and South Africa, shows that the anti-tail is not aligned with the solar wind vector. It is off by 12 degrees. 12 degrees might not sound like much, but in celestial mechanics, it is everything. It means the tail is not being pushed, it is being aimed. So we trace the line. We followed the vector of that massive 400,000 kilometer structure out into the deep black. We wanted to see where it led. It points directly at the galactic center, Sagittarius A star, the heart of the Milky Way, the same direction it came from. Think about the implications. You have an object that enters our system, performs a gravity assist around our star, stabilizes itself, deploys a massive structure that defies the solar wind, and then locks that structure onto its point of origin. It is not a tail, it is an antenna, a high-gain transmission array, and the wobble, the oscillation we detected, that is the modulation. That is the signal being encoded into the carrier wave. We are witnessing a data dump right now as it passes Earth. 3I Atlas is beaming everything it has learned back home. It is uploading the scan data. It is reporting on us. And this brings us to the most chilling realization of all, the timing. Why December 19th? Why is the closest approach so important? Because on December 19th, Earth passes directly between 3I Atlas and the Sun. For a brief window of time, we will be in its shadow, or rather, it will be in ours. This is the moment of maximum signal clarity, the moment when the solar interference is blocked by our own planet, creating a quiet zone for the receiver. Or perhaps it is using our planet's gravity to lens the signal, boosting its power for the long journey back to the core. We are not just observers in this event. We are a component of the transmission. We are the lens. The scientists at Science Alert are calling this a close approach. They are excited about the proximity. They are telling you to watch the skies because it will be beautiful. But they are missing the bigger picture. This is not a flyby. This is a handshake. We are being indexed. We are being cataloged. And in 48 hours, the file will be sent. So what happens when the upload is complete? What happens when the probe finishes its mission? Does it go dormant? Does it self-destruct? Or does it receive a new command? There is one final anomaly that I have not shared with you yet. Something that was buried in the raw data logs of the Deep Space Network. A series of pings that started 3 hours ago. They are not coming from the comet. They are coming to it. Someone is answering. You need to be ready. The final countdown has begun, and now we are standing on the precipice. Tomorrow night, December 19th, 3I Atlas will be at its closest point to our planet. It will be 270 million kilometers away, a stone's throw in cosmic terms. So what should you do? First, if you have a telescope, point it at Lepus. Document what you see. Take images. Record data, because the official channels might not share everything. Second, watch for any announcements, any sudden press conferences, any unusual activity from space agencies or intelligence organizations. Third, share this information. The more people who know, the harder it is to suppress the truth. And fourth, prepare yourself mentally, because if what we suspect is true, if 3I Atlas is not just a comet, then everything changes. We are not alone. We have never been alone, and the universe is about to get a lot more crowded. The CIA can classify their files. They can invoke the Glomar response. They can build their legal fortress around the truth, but they cannot stop December 19th from coming. They cannot stop 3I Atlas from completing its mission. They cannot stop the signal from being sent. And they cannot stop us from watching, from documenting, from demanding answers. Let's talk about why the CIA is involved in the first place. Why would an intelligence agency care about a comet? The answer is the black swan theory. This is a concept from risk management that intelligence agencies use to assess threats. A black swan event is something that is highly improbable but has massive consequences if it occurs. The classic example is 9/11. Before it happened, the idea of terrorists hijacking multiple planes and flying them into buildings seemed far-fetched. But when it happened, it changed everything. Intelligence agencies are trained to look for black swans, to identify low probability, high-impact events, and prepare for them. And 3I Atlas fits that profile perfectly. The probability that it is an alien probe might be low, but if it is, the impact would be catastrophic to our understanding of reality. So the CIA is hedging their bets. They are investigating it as if it were a threat, even if they publicly claim it is just a comet. This is Pascal's wager applied to national security. Better to be prepared and wrong than unprepared and right. And the Glomar response is their way of keeping their options open. By neither confirming nor denying, they can investigate without committing to a position. But this creates a problem, because while they investigate in secret, the public is left in the dark. We are told it is just a comet, while the intelligence community treats it as a potential threat. This is the information asymmetry that Loeb is fighting against. He believes the public has a right to know what is being discovered. That transparency is more important than secrecy. And I agree. Let's talk about Maven again, because this is one of the most suspicious aspects of the entire 3I Atlas story. Maven is NASA's Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution probe. It has been orbiting Mars since 2014, studying the planet's atmosphere and climate. In late 2025, as 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, Maven was perfectly positioned to capture high-resolution images of the visitor. This was supposed to be our Oumuamua moment. The chance to finally get the detailed multispectral data we missed with the first interstellar visitor. The world's astronomers were holding their breath, waiting for the sensors to beam back the first unfiltered images of the visitor's core from just a few thousand kilometers away. And then the signal stopped. One minute, Maven was healthy, its telemetry stable, its heart beating in the cold void. The next, it was just a piece of junk drifting in the darkness. NASA officially cited a technical glitch combined with a minor solar flare. But to many, that explanation feels like a convenient fiction. Think about the statistical impossibility of a probe that has survived years in the harsh Martian environment, suddenly suffering a fatal, unrecoverable failure at the exact millisecond of its most important observation. It was not just a reboot or a safe mode transition. It was a total system blackout. There are researchers now pushing back on the official story, noting that no other probes or satellites in the Martian vicinity reported any significant solar interference that day. It makes you wonder, did 3I Atlas react to being watched? One hypothesis gaining ground is that the object possesses an active defense mechanism, an electromagnetic pulse, or a jamming signal designed to maintain its privacy as it moves through the solar system. Others argue the signal was not lost at all, but was deliberately cut by someone back here on Earth who did not want those images hitting the public servers. I cannot shake the feeling that we were blinded on purpose. Whether it was an act of non-human intelligence or a bureaucratic kill switch, the result is the same. The truth was scrubbed before it could even reach our screens. Let's talk about probability, because this is where the natural comet hypothesis really starts to fall apart. Any one of the anomalies we have discussed could be explained away as a rare but natural occurrence. But when you start stacking them up, when you calculate the compound probability, the numbers become impossible to ignore. The rotation axis aligned with the sun, 0.2% probability. The trajectory aligned with the ecliptic plane, 0.2% probability. The compound probability of both, 0.01, or 1 in 10,000. And we have not even factored in the other anomalies yet. The nickel to iron ratio, the anti-tail wobble, the dimming behavior, the Maven blackout, the CIA's Glomar response. Each one individually might be dismissed, but together, the compound probability drops to levels that are statistically indistinguishable from zero. At some point, you have to stop calling it coincidence and start calling it a pattern. And patterns imply design, patterns imply intent, patterns imply intelligence. This is what Loeb has been arguing all along. Not that 3I Atlas is definitely artificial, but that the statistical improbability demands serious investigation. And that investigation is being blocked by the scientific establishment that rejects papers without peer review, by NASA that glosses over the anomalies in press conferences, by the CIA that classifies the data. The silence is not just bureaucratic caution. It is a deliberate suppression of information that the public has a right to know. Let's talk more about Eupheme, because this is where the navigation hypothesis becomes undeniable. Eupheme is not a random target. It is not a coincidence that 3I Atlas is heading there. Eupheme was chosen, deliberately, for specific reasons. Let me tell you why Eupheme is the perfect destination for an interstellar probe. First, it is in the Ananke group, a cluster of retrograde moons orbiting Jupiter. These moons move backwards against the natural rotation of the Jovian system. This makes them gravitationally stable. They are not going to crash into Jupiter or get ejected from the system. They are in stable orbits that will last for billions of years. If you are delivering a payload that needs to remain in place for a long time, you want a stable orbit. You want a moon that is not going anywhere. Second, Eupheme is small, only 2 kilometers across. It is barely more than a large asteroid. This means it has very low gravity. Landing on it or docking with it requires minimal energy. If you are a spacecraft that has been traveling for millions of years and you are running low on fuel, you want an easy target. You want something you can reach without burning through your remaining reserves. Third, Eupheme is in the outer reaches of Jupiter's gravity well. It is far enough from the planet that it is not subjected to intense radiation from Jupiter's magnetosphere, but close enough that it is still within the Hill sphere, the region where Jupiter's gravity dominates. If you are looking for a safe harbor, a place to park and wait, Eupheme is ideal. It is protected, but not dangerous. And fourth, Eupheme is unobserved. We have almost no detailed images of it. Despite decades of Jupiter missions, the Ananke group remains largely unexplored. If you are trying to avoid detection, if you are trying to operate in secret, Eupheme is perfect. It is a blind spot in our surveillance of the solar system. All of these factors make Eupheme the ideal destination for an interstellar probe. And the fact that 3I Atlas is heading there with 0.1% precision on the Hill sphere crossing is proof that this destination was chosen, not stumbled upon. But here is where it gets even more disturbing. What if Eupheme is not just a destination? What if it is a rendezvous point? What if the Ananke group is not a collection of captured asteroids, but a fleet of ancient probes all waiting for 3I Atlas to arrive? Think about it. The Ananke group contains 71 known moons, all in retrograde orbits, all in the outer reaches of Jupiter's gravity well. We have almost no detailed images of any of them. What if they are all like 3I Atlas? What if they are all machines, hiding under a coating of ice and dust, waiting for the signal to activate? 3I Atlas could be the wake-up call, the trigger, the key that unlocks the fleet. When it reaches Eupheme on March 17th, it might not be docking with a moon. It might be docking with another probe. And that docking might send a signal to all the other probes in the Ananke group. And then they all wake up. Imagine 71 ancient spacecraft, all activating at once, all opening their cargo bays, all revealing their payloads, all beginning their missions after millions of years of dormancy. What would that look like? What would that mean? It would mean we are not just dealing with one probe. We are dealing with an entire network, a system, a coordinated effort by a civilization that planned for the long term, a civilization that knew they might not survive, but wanted to ensure that their legacy did. And they chose our solar system. They chose Jupiter. They chose the Ananke group. Why? What is special about us? What is special about this location? Maybe nothing. Maybe we are just one of thousands of star systems they seeded with probes. Maybe this is happening all across the galaxy, and we are just now noticing it. Or maybe there is something special about Earth. Maybe they detected our biosphere. Maybe they knew that life was here, and they wanted to make contact when we were ready. And maybe, just maybe, March 17th, 2026 is the day they have been waiting for. Today is January 15th, 2026. We are 61 days away from March 17th. 61 days until 3I Atlas crosses the Jupiter Hill sphere. 61 days until it reaches Eupheme. 61 days until we find out if this is really just a comet or if it is something else entirely. What should you be watching for? First, watch for any announcements about orbital changes. If 3I Atlas suddenly adjusts its trajectory in the next few weeks, that is a sign that it is making final course corrections for the rendezvous. Second, watch for changes in brightness. If the object suddenly brightens or dims dramatically, that could indicate a change in activity. It could mean the engine is firing. It could mean the antenna is deploying. It could mean something is happening. Third, watch for any unusual activity in the Ananke group. If other moons in that cluster start showing strange behavior, if they start moving in unexpected ways, that could be a sign that they are waking up. And fourth, watch for the silence. Watch for what is not being said. Watch for the data that is being classified. Watch for the scientists who suddenly stop talking about 3I Atlas, because the silence is the loudest signal of all. If this is really just a comet, there is no reason to hide the data. There is no reason to classify the images. There is no reason to invoke the Glomar response. But if it is something else, if it is a probe, if it is first contact, then the silence makes perfect sense. They are not ready to tell us yet. They are not ready for the world to know. But on March 17th, they will not have a choice. Because either 3I Atlas will pass by Eupheme and continue on its way, proving it is just a comet, or it will enter orbit and become Jupiter's 96th moon, proving it is something else entirely. We are 61 days away from the truth. Thank you for watching. If you want to support independent analysis of the 3I Atlas phenomenon, please subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment below with your theory. Is it a surveyor, a scout, or just a very strange rock? I am betting on the scout. 3I Atlas is out there right now. As you are reading this, it is moving through space at tens of thousands of miles per hour, heading toward Jupiter, heading toward Eupheme, heading toward its destination. Every day it gets closer. Every day the countdown ticks down. Every day we get closer to the moment of truth. March 17th, 2026. That is the date. That is when we will know. The CIA can classify their files. They can invoke the Glomar response. They can build their legal fortress around the truth. But they cannot stop March 17th from coming. They cannot stop 3I Atlas from reaching its destination. They cannot stop the truth from revealing itself. The Glomar response is not just a bureaucratic tool. It is a confession. It is an admission that something about 3I Atlas is so sensitive, so classified, so important to national security, that even acknowledging the CIA has records on it would be dangerous. That is not the language you use for a comet. That is the language you use for a threat, or a probe, or something that fundamentally changes our understanding of our place in the universe. And the fact that this response came on New Year's Eve, while the world was celebrating, while we were distracted, is not a coincidence. They hoped we would not notice. They hoped it would get buried in the holiday news cycle. But we noticed, and we are not going to let this go. Because the truth matters, the data matters, the anomalies matter. And on March 17th, 2026, we will find out just how much they matter. Until then, keep watching the stars, keep asking questions, keep demanding answers, because the universe is vast, and we are not alone. The alligator is here. It is hungry for a destination, and it is already parking in the driveway.